Okay, I wanted to open this video quickly by just showing exactly how the powers work, how I'm going to be playing as an Adept in Mass Effect 3. For the most part, you're going to be getting 95% of your kills by using Liara's Stasis and then comboing that with your throw. And I'll be going into a lot more details about how I level up all these powers later on in this video. When you create a biotic detonation, you first apply like a passive effect to an enemy, and then you have to kind of detonate it with like a throw or a shockwave or some other damaging ability from an Adept. Liara's Stasis, though, however, has absolutely zero effect on armored targets, so that's where Shepard's Warp comes in very handy, because it is absolutely devastating to armored targets. So let's set up a couple biotic detonations, and then I'll get into the more nitty-gritty details about how all this works and why I chose, and which paths I chose for leveling up. So, the Combat Engineer, I got Stasis set, let's get this Assault Trooper. I hit 1 because that's what I got Liara's Stasis set to, and then I throw, and this is on Insanity difficulty, and I just killed that guy right away. I'm level 60 right now, so that enemy is as strong as it gets, and I just tore him apart. Things like a turret, because it has armor, what I'll do is I'll throw Warp on it first, let the recharge cool down, take care of that guy before he freaking grenades are screwing with my tutorial. And then I hit that turret, and it's dead. Just 1-2 punch right there. She stasis that guy, throw again. Engineer, stasis, almost killed him instantly. Stasis again, 1-2 combo, just constantly do that. Stasis 1, throw 3, or warp with 2, and then throw with 3. At least that's how I have it set up on my PC. So, yeah. Stay tuned for the leveling up breakdown. Okay, so this is an introduction video to my Adept guide, and I wanted to quickly explain how the Adept class works and what teammates you should be using and what powers you should be leveling up to make it through the game on Insanity difficulty, even at the highest level when all the enemies are as strong as they can possibly be with relative ease. So first, Liara is extremely important to choose for your squad selection anytime on any mission. She's pretty pivotal in having a successful Adept build for single player. Because she also uses biotic powers, makes it very easy to create biotic detonations, which I'll get into in a second. Javik also uses biotic powers, but because he's a DLC character, I mean, I use him because he has some cool biotic powers, but he's not as crucial to have as Liara is, but I will be using him for most of my guide, but he's not required. So let's take a look at the powers I'm using. Guns aren't important, so I'm completely maxed out, but the powers you want to max out first are Warp and Throw and Biotic Mastery. Now Biotic Mastery is just like passive buffs to your power damage, but let's take a look at Warp. So what this does, so the way biotic detonations work, which is how you're going to be doing most of your damage throughout the game, is you create like a 1-2 punch combo with biotic powers. First you apply an effect to an enemy, that's either Warp or Stasis. You'll be using Stasis a lot too, and then after you've applied that first effect, you throw the enemy, and then that creates a huge biotic detonation that damages everything around the unit that you were targeting, and does a huge amount of damage to a large group of people. So the typical combo that I use a lot is I stasis a group of enemies with the bubble stasis that Liara has, and then I throw right away with Shepard's throw ability. And because I have two different people using stasis powers, it cuts the cooldown time in half, and throw already has an incredibly low recharge speed, 1.16 seconds if you have only a pistol equipped as a weapon, and then her stasis, the recharge time is 4 seconds, so it's really, really fast to get these very powerful biotic detonations. So let's take a closer look at exactly what I put my points into. So for throw, first 3 levels are basic. Force, for level 4, I do the top one. This gives me increased force, which, it doesn't say explicitly that this power does damage, but it does an incredible amount of damage. The more force you put into the biotic detonation, the more damage it's going to do. So you can increase the impact radius by 2 meters, but when it comes to killing bosses and stuff, or brutes and banshees and atlases, it's important to have that extra force. For rank 5, increase force and damage of biotic detonations by 50%. Again, very important, because all the damage you're going to be doing with throw is going to be with biotic detonations, so getting this extra boost is incredibly important. The other option is reset the recharge time after biotic combo detonates. That's a pretty shitty ability, because the recharge time, when I don't even choose that, is just over 1 second. So that's a pretty terrible way to level that up. And then I chose double throw instead of increasing the recharge speed, because a lot of times what'll happen is enemies will like dodge your throw, and having that second throw will, almost guaranteed hit them every time you do throw. This is really just kind of a preference. I like the double throw better, just because it looks cooler. Let's go to warp. Level 4. Again, there's another option to increase force damage and impact of radius combo detonations by 50%. So when you warp an enemy and then throw them, you get 100% bonus between the 2 different upgrades that you chose. So that's very important to do. So you can, increase the damage for every time you throw warp, or you can increase the biotic detonation, which is much, much better. For level 5, do expose, which weakens the target and increases the power damage taken by the target by 15%. So it's like an extra 15% damage when you do those biotic combinations. You could also increase the damage by 40%, but the detonations, again, is where you're getting most of the damage. And then the final one, I chose Pierce because it increases damage to barriers and armor by 50%, which is the important buff that you're getting there, because the only time you're going to be using warp is against armored targets, and that's because targets that have armor cannot be stasised by Liara's stasis. So, and just like the stasis just freezes enemies in place. So if they have armor, which is units like the Atlas, the Wraith, or the Banshee, sorry, not the Wraith, and the Brute, you're going to be using warp. So, and those enemies all have a lot of armor and barrier health. So you have to kill them really quickly. Those guys are the ones that are going to be giving you the biggest headaches, because you can't stasis them. So warp is incredibly effective against enemies that have a lot of armor. So those are the 2 important things for Biotic Mastery. Choose everything that gives you extra power damage and force damage. Or I guess this one's just force damage. I did the weight capacity and the damage and force bonus by 10%. I didn't like the one that gives squad might power bonuses. I'm a little selfish like that, I guess. And then for the last one, just more power mastery. And I also chose energy drain as my bonus skill, because as a biotic, or as an adept rather, the enemies that you're going to struggle with the most you're going to struggle a lot taking down enemies that have shields. Like, you don't have anything that's very good against shields, but the energy drain kills almost all units' shields instantly. So let's take a look at Liara. Now, what you might notice here is that I'm level 60 and I have 27 extra points to spend, but I have not put a single point into warp or singularity for her. And the way I got that 1 default point out of singularity is in the on the Normandy. You go down to, I think it's level 3, you go to the doctor's office and you can reset your teammates' powers. And that pulled that 1 point out of singularity. I put no points into warp, put them all into stasis and warp ammo. And the reason I did this is because I don't want her using any powers except for stasis. when I'm using, like, if I want to warp an enemy, I'll use my own warp. If I want, and like Singularity is not nearly as good as Stasis. So I just completely removed her ability to use anything but Stasis. Now, the reason Stasis is significantly better than Singularity is that because Singularity, it's a fun power to use. It lifts up any enemies that only have health. But Stasis will freeze any enemy in place that, even if they have health, underneath a layer of shields. So I'm trying to think what enemies. I'm drawing a blank on the name of, like, you know, some of the Geth will have like a shield, like an energy shield, I should say more specifically, over a layer of health, and you can still freeze those guys. Or like the Engineer for Cerberus, they have an energy shield on top of a layer of health, and you can't freeze, or you can't lift with Singularity those Engineers. Stasis, if you get this energy bubble, you can freeze multiple enemies very quickly, and then quickly get off that combo, even if they have multiple layers of health. It does not have any effect on enemies that have any armor, though. So the Geth Flamethrowers, the Geth Prime, the Brute, the Banshee, or I keep calling it the Banshee. No, it is the Banshee. I didn't mean to call it the Wraith. That's what I called it incorrectly before. So anyway, so for Liara, for Stasis, I chose the 150% more damage to targets before Stasis breaks, so that's even more damage when you create the biotic detonations against basic enemies. Increase the recharge speed instead of... I like this better. It's a guaranteed increased recharge speed by 35% instead of a gamble that there's no recharge speed. And then absolutely get the bubble, because it's... when you trap like a whole group of enemies, you can just absolutely decimate a group of enemies instantly if you can get off like that double throw and the bubble on multiple enemies at the same time. And those are the important powers to level up. Everything else, even Javik, I did something similar with him. I don't want him using pull. I only want him using Dark Channel and Slam. Pull is kind of worthless compared to Slam, so I just don't want him. I mean, the AI isn't great. They don't always do what you want them to, so I just completely remove his ability to do stupid things. But you know, Shockwave, it actually does more damage than Throw if you create a biotic detonation, but for the most part, you won't be getting very close to any enemies. It's important to put at least 1 point in pull for yourself. If, let's say, Liara died and you can't Stasis the Cerberus enemies that have like the physical riot shield, and then you can just use pull at level 1 to just pull their shield completely away from them and completely remove it from the situation. Cluster grenades I never remember to use. I should probably remember to use them more often. But yeah, thanks for watching the intro to the powers.